Prove it to me that Jesus existed. Prove to me that he's
Lord.
but he could have been just a man just like you.
I'll prove to you, Jesus, if you first prove to me George Washington. What he taught, how he died, how he rose from the dead, points to his credibility.
We don't steal because we think God's going to stick us in heaven because of it. That's the wrong motivation.
What do you mean? You believe it's all relative. What are you doing telling me? Oh, come on, Cliff, come on, Cliff. You really do know it's wrong.
This atheist wants absolute proof that Jesus is real. So make sure to watch till the end because I have a Bible verse that will tie all of this together. Let's get right into it.
Jesus is just a man that's been deified over history with the Bible, given supernatural, characteristics. But he could have been just a man just like you, anywhere just like this, just talking about what he thinks, what he thinks is right. But what is right? There is some validity. You can't prove religion. It's all myth. It's myth. You can't prove religion. You can't prove it. Prove it to me that Jesus existed. Prove to me that these
Sure, no problem. I'll prove to you, Jesus, if you first of all prove to me Napoleon. I'll prove to you, Jesus, if you first prove to me George Washington. I'll prove to you, Jesus, if you first prove to me George Washington Carver.
Don't prove the person's existence. I'm saying prove the ideas that the person talks about. Prove to me what there's a heaven that's up there. Prove to me that there's, that your God truly exists. Prove to me that these precepts of the Bible are truly what true revelation. Prove to me that these things are actually there. I'm an empiricist. Prove to me that they're there.
All right, I'll do that. If, first of all, you prove to me that your taste buds are telling you the truth when they tell you you're drinking sour milk.
Secondary ration, some things you can't prove, so then you fall upon
Some
faith.
things you can't prove. Sir, I'm sorry, I haven't communicated clearly. Sir, you can't prove a thing. To prove means to show it cannot be another way. You cannot prove a thing in life. You as a thinking human being don't base your life on proof. You base your life on evidence. What does the evidence point to? And you follow the evidence. To prove means to show it cannot be another way. What can you prove in life? Prove to me we're having this conversation right now. You can't prove it. We might be dreaming. Someone might have dropped some drugs in our tea. But the evidence is we're having this conversation. That's why I'm hanging in there with you. That's why you're hanging in there with me. Evidence. Okay, so the evidence is God exists. The evidence is the order and the design of the cosmos point to an intelligent mind. Moral absolutes point to some moral giver, lawgiver. Life comes from life. Never once have I ever seen life come from non-life. An atheist is someone who says, oh yeah, at some point, somewhere, at one time, in La La Land, life came from non-life. And I'm saying, all of my experience shows me life comes from life. Never once have I seen life come from non-life. Fourth piece of evidence, free will. If there is no God, you're just a hunk of biochemical reactions. That's all I am. You're not free. You're determined by your biochemical reactions. So am I. I'm sorry. I judge myself at night. I say, Cliff, when you spoke to that student, that was pretty rude. When you spoke to that student, boy, you displayed a lot of patience, man. Tomorrow, do that again and don't do that. I judge myself. I critique myself. I'm free. I don't have to do what I do. Well, if I'm free, it means there's more to me than just my biochemical makeup. There's a soul, a personality, an I that goes beyond the biochemical. I have a free will. Well, the free will can only exist if there's some type of God who creates me biochemically, but also gives me a will that's not totally dependent upon my biochemical reactions. That's why I believe God exists.
Yeah, if there's no God, then we all don't have free will. We're just doing things based on our chemical wires to survive. And we're just gonna do our own thing, live for our own self, because we're just doing things that help us survive or make us feel good or to fulfill our desires, which is very, very sad and dangerous.
Because the historical evidence of the way he lived, what he taught, how he died, how he rose from the dead, points to his credibility. If you live like Jesus lived, if you teach what he taught, if you died the way he died, loving and forgiving your enemies, and if 3 days later you rise from the dead, sir, I will listen very closely to everything you have to say, because the evidence is you're trustworthy. So that's why I believe in Jesus. Does that make any sense?
Slightly, yes, but still, you must admit that a lot of religious beliefs and stuff fall upon the ideas of fate, and that there's some things you can answer. And so that it sort of directs itself towards secondary rationalization. That's all religion is to me. Is that what you can explain by empirical evidence, you go to faith.
Sir, if you get a postdoc degree in chemistry, do you know everything there is to know about chemistry?
I'm sure you don't. No,
Thank you. Does anybody know everything about any topic? No. Nobody has exhaustive knowledge in any area. And if I have communicated to you in the slightest that I know everything there is about God, I apologize. I have radically miscommunicated. Instead, what I've tried to communicate is I'm a beggar who has found where living bread is in a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And I've come to tell fellow beggars where they too can find bread. And the best answer I give often is, I do not know. You're right, sir. There are a lot of mysteries about God, a lot of unanswered questions. You bet.
What it really comes down to, we know what Jesus has done in our lives, and he's changed us from the inside out. He's given us joy, fulfillment that nothing could ever comprehend. God is so good. And there's evidence for Jesus. There's evidence to show that he is who he said he was.
Personally, I believe that the morals of the religions are basically correct. But I think that religion basically came about because if there wasn't religion, don't get me wrong, I don't believe in God, but I'm happy that religion is in the world. Because if religion of some sort was not in the world, then humans, like you said, would consider themselves completely insignificant beings. And whether that's correct or not, I mean, frankly, I think that science is continuing to prove that we are, more and more, things we attributed prior to the supernatural is more and more being proven through science. And if we embrace the fact that we're insignificant beings, then we're not going to live the lives the way we should. We're going to walk around saying, beating up our neighbors, saying, well, it doesn't matter that I'm beating up my neighbor because there's no reason I'm going to die, he's going to die, what's the difference? And obviously, humans have come up with a moral code within themselves over history saying that that's not the correct thing to do. I don't necessarily think God did that. I think that humans, after you punch someone in the face that they're not happy about it, and thinking, wow, I wouldn't be happy if that happened to me, embrace an idea that, wow, that's not the correct thing to do. I don't think God did that. I think that was human experience. And so therefore, if people want to attribute that to God, that's fine if it makes them not do that. If my believing in God and thinking I'm going to go to hell prevents you from punching someone in the face, fine, believe in God. It's worth it, But I think that the reason that people do that, the more important idea is the ethical code, how we treat one another, not how we treat a glorified yet undistinguishable God.
What do you have to say to me if I say, listen, man, I've only got 60 to 80 years to live on this planet.
Right.
And I want to steal some of his money.
Right.
Because I only have 60 to 80 years.
Right.
And I want as much pleasure, as much happiness in my life as I can.
Right.
So why shouldn't I steal?
The reason you shouldn't steal is just because there may not be a God who's condemning you for it. It doesn't mean that your actions don't have an effect on the people around you. That's where people have differences. If you steal from someone, it has an effect on people around you. And I think that the morals that we've developed for ourselves in most religions are based on the fact that it's not the correct thing to do to intentionally hurt people around you. And you can say the same thing for the Holocaust. You can justify that, people could say the Holocaust, you killed thousands of people, but they're going to die anyway. But the fact is that action affected people from generations and generations and generations, so forth. And so I think that the reason we have our moral code is not to uphold the word of God, but, that our actions affect the people around us. We can't, like you said, there's no answer. We don't see God. We don't know everything about God. We're trusting our perceptions. And I think our perceptions of the people around us are much more valid than our perceptions of a God, because we can see the people around us. We can interact with them. And I don't think, maybe you can, but the average person cannot go, hey, God, what's up, and have a conversation.
Yeah, but if what you say is correct, that morality simply comes from our common sense, our rational thinking, don't you understand my rational thinking that tells me I've got 60 to 80 years to live on this planet, I need some money, he's got more than enough money to take care of his needs, I'm going to steal some of his money. Don't you understand my rationale?
That's funny. He's like, most people can't just have a conversation with God. Well, when you're a Christian, you can. But yeah, you can. You can have a conversation with God. That's the best thing about it. Different ways, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And I'm so thankful that he does that in our lives. If there is no God, there's nothing wrong with stealing from someone, because it's just the end of the time. It's you can do whatever. There's no life after death. It's sad. It's whatever. But let's continue.
I understand the rationale, and I mean, like you said, you judge not lest ye be judged. You may consider that incorrect. People don't have the same moralities. But I think universally, if you look over history, you keep on citing history, you cite that people think this is wrong. And the reason...
So what? You think I'm going to base my life on what the majority of people think? Is that what you're asking me to do?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. So I'm saying if the majority of people here are Christians. So, I mean, how can you say that, that we should follow the word of God, based on the fact that most people are Christians and they believe in it as well? I mean, it's no different.
I don't think the majority of people at the University of Texas are seeking to follow Jesus Christ. Do you?
Well, no, but they may consider themselves Christians. There's a difference in that, I agree.
Yeah. So, I think it's pretty commonly accepted that to steal and not get caught, it's not that bad. It's bad to get caught. That's what happens to the dummies. But if you can steal and not get caught, like an NCAA football program or basketball program, it's not wrong to do something illegal in terms of getting the best ball players in. It's just wrong to get caught and get put on probation. So for me to steal, as long as I don't get caught, I mean, what's wrong with that?
Are you meaning to suggest that the only reason that is wrong is because Jesus Christ said it was wrong?
No.
Okay.
You have told me that the basis of your morality is your common sense, your rational thinking.
Right.
Well, I want to know your rational thinking that show me that stealing from this guy is wrong.
My rational thinking that stealing is wrong is because it directly affects another person in a negative way. And from own experiences with a rationale of that, don't hurt others unless you want to be hurt yourself. I don't think that's a strictly Christian concept. I think that's a concept which all of us develop over time. It doesn't matter what religion we are. I grew up Jewish, and Judaism embraced that. I'm atheist now. Atheism embraces that.
But that's not a very good example because Christians are coming from Judaism. We have all of their moral values. That's just your viewpoint, though, if you're an atheist. If you're an atheist, you can come up with your own viewpoint and do whatever you want because that's your moral values. It's just because someone comes up with it then doesn't mean it's okay. Everyone is going to do that or it's right. But if the Bible says so, if that's from God and that's the moral code that he's given us on our hearts. But if you're an atheist, then you can't tell someone that what they're doing is wrong. Let's continue.
It's experience of getting hurt ourselves. It's experience of seeing how that's unpleasant and not wanting to have that be brought upon someone else that we consider an equal. It's got nothing to do with the fact that, we think that we're going to go to heaven if we do that. If that's our motivation for doing it. If we don't steal because we think God's going to stick us in heaven because of it, that's the wrong motivation. You do it because it's something you generally believe in, not because you think it's going to get you something later on in your next life.
Yeah,
that's
but
not
don't
the
you
right
see what
reason
you're
to do
saying?
it.
You're doing exactly what you're critiquing. You're saying, well, there are no moral absolutes. It's all a question of making it up in your head. And therefore, if I make up in my head that the benefits that I will gain are far more than him losing because of how much money he has, a few $1,000, I'm going to steal because the benefits are so great.
Right.
Well, what's wrong with that, man?
It's a judgment call. I mean, obviously we can think it's wrong, but
It's all relative, right?
obviously, yes, it's all relative. It's all relative.
So we're not going to get sentimental and get really sloppy and say, oh, no, Cliff, you should really not steal because, it's really not a nice thing to do.
Well, that's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that everyone here has to necessarily agree with that opinion. It's their own judgment call.
Yeah.
It's based on their experience.
Right.
And you asked me why I wouldn't steal, and I answered that question. That doesn't mean this is why everyone shouldn't steal. Based on my opinion, my own developed morality from growing up, from experiencing, that's why I wouldn't steal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not saying that everyone in the world shouldn't steal because of that. It's not saying that, I think this is the only morality. This is the morality that I've established and I believe in. And I think that most people have taken that morality upon their own experience of seeing, other people in pain, seeing, knowing what it's like to be in pain and knowing they wouldn't wish that upon someone else.
Right.
And I
But
don't
you see,
think
you're
we need
so
a
upset and
religion.
frustrated with me because I have a basis for my morality, which is obviously God. And you're sort of saying, well, you see, Cliff, I just believe people make this up so that they can have their moral absolutes. But don't you see what you're doing? You're telling me that morality is relative. But then you're not taking it seriously. Meaning by that, your positions on battered wives, abused children, stealing. You don't really believe that whatever the position is you hold, the opposite is equally as valid. You insist, you keep on saying, oh, come on, Cliff, you really know that stealing is wrong. You see, you can't live out your moral relativism. You're consistently trying to push me back to, come on, Cliff, you really do know, don't you, that stealing's wrong. Come on, Cliff, come on, buddy. What do you mean? You believe it's all relative. What are you doing telling me, oh, come on, Cliff, you really do know it's wrong. No. If what you believe is true, if there is no God, then it's not really wrong to steal. It's all relative. So whatever your position is on stealing, date, child abuse, battered wives, you have to acknowledge in order to be consistent that the opposite position is just as valid as yours.
And that's super dangerous, and it's difficult for atheists. I think this is something that just puts atheists in a box every time, because they have to admit, yeah, I guess it's equally valid for people, and you can't just like say, come on, you know that it's bad. You know, but how? What if people actually don't know it's bad, or say, oh, I'm going to do whatever I want because it makes me feel good and it's going to benefit me? Because a lot of times his whole argument, I'm going to do things because I know that's not how I want to be treated. I don't want to be treated. I don't want people to steal from me. That's not going to benefit me if people steal from me. But if people only think about what's going to benefit them, and I'm not going to get caught. No one's going to steal from me. I'm going to make sure that they don't, but I'm going to steal from others because it's going to benefit me. That's dangerous. So now I have a Bible verse that will tie all of this together. Romans 2:15 says, they demonstrate that God's law is written in their hearts. For their own conscience, thoughts either accuse them or tell them they are doing right. So maybe how we know how we're doing right or wrong is from God's law written on our hearts. So go to him today. Know that he loves you and he's longing to have a relationship with you. In the description below, you can fill out this information if you want to decide to follow Jesus for the first time. Do that today. Comment down below your thoughts on this. I would love to hear them. And please like this video. Subscribe if you haven't. And you might like this video. Here. Peace.